Hey everybody, looks like my stream may have broken. Awesome. Let's see if that's working here. I got video. Okay, it's working. Just doesn't show on my screen. That'll work for me. All right. Today we're talking about a new concept, or at least new to me. Might be new to you. I'm not sure. And that is low energy aquariums. Now, I think to talk about that, we need to cover some of the more commonly used terms, and that is low tech, no tech, high tech, and you might be new to those concepts. So I want to talk about them. High tech would traditionally be, and this is what I understand, there's 7,000 different definitions on the web. Nerds will be battling in the streets, but for the sake of this conversation, a high tech aquarium typically has CO2 injection, high intensity lighting, lots of fertilizers going into it. Maybe you're using lots of wave makers and just auto dosers and lots of that stuff. So lots of technology, lots of nutrients, lots of all the things going on, all the things. And then you've got low tech, which would be kind of the opposite of that, where it's like, hey, what's the minimal stuff I need to run to kind of get the result I'm looking for? And then you've got no tech, which typically is maybe just a light and either just a sponge filter or not even sponge filter or air. And those are normal definitions, I would say. And that might be confusing because you're just like, I just keep a fish tank and I do things. Like, yeah, most of us do. But this low energy aquarium came about. I was watching Stephen P's video, which someone will probably link. I thought was really well done, by the way. And he kind of said he was into low energy aquariums. And I paused and I kind of thought about the thing like low energy. And that kind of, it really resonated with me. It's not that, like, the tank behind me has got CO2 injection and it's got fancy lights on it and things like that. And an auto doser too. You would normally call that high tech, except I hate high tech tanks. And instead, I've never really known how to classify what I do. Is I want all the gadgets I want to play with. I want everything to grow very slowly because I don't want to deal with it all the time. But I also want it to look good. And so that low energy really resonated with me, saying like, okay, what I took from that is that slow plants like Crypts, Anubias, Java ferns, Bulbitis, anything that I don't have to trim for months at a time. And that became low energy. Like, yeah, I'm going to feed it every day, but I don't have to clean it every day. I don't have to scrub it every day. I don't have to trim it every day. And the energy that I put out for the amount of reward that I get in is the ratio is really good. And so by putting in low energy, it's really easy to get a positive outcome, right? And so if we think about that in dollars, maybe I paid $5 and we made dinner and it was a low dinner, but a low costing dinner, but the reward was high. Maybe it's a comfort food, right? Comfort foods typically very cheap to make, but they're very comforting. And that's what I get out of this aquarium is like the fish are cheap for the most part. I mean, there are some high-end fish in there, but I don't even like them. They kind of suck. Anyway, and I bought good lights, and I've got CO2 injection, but the plants, they're happy. Someone asked, why does that look like that aquarium is smoking inside? The plants are so happy they're purling. So they're releasing tons of oxygen, just going, hey, we love life. And because it's Anubias, it's going to make a leaf every 5 days. And in a few months, I'd have to do something about that. Where if I have a stem plant, it's just going to grow this much every day, and every week I'm going to have to trim it, and that's not as enjoyable, just because it gets monotonous real quick. And so I like low energy tanks. I didn't really know how to classify it, but when I breed plants, or not plants, but fish, I want a colony breed. I don't necessarily want to have to remove the fry or remove the eggs, hatch them out artificially, and move them 3 or 4 tanks down the road to get them to sell, right? I kind of want to set up a colony. I want it to breed. Every once in a while, I'll take some to the fish store. Low energy going in, big reward coming out of it. And so, and everywhere I look at my fish room, I pretty much optimize for that. I optimize for maximum fun or enjoyment that Steven kind of came up with. Is he optimizes for fun, and I think that's what I do too without ever verbalizing that. Is if I'm not having fun, you notice it in the videos and it's work. And I do enjoy gravel vacuuming, for instance. There are things I do enjoy in moderation. If I have to gravel vac 100 tanks at the store, that gets boring by about hour 3. It's very satisfying though. Some people, you might have met them where when they clean something, it's really satisfying. I get that from scrubbing algae and gravel vacuuming. It's very satisfying. And you might say like, well, then why do your tanks look like crap, Corey? Like I see algae. Overworked. Yeah. So because there's so little time in my day-to-day from just what might pop up in work, I don't get the time where I would go do that and have fun. And so I go out of my way to, automate water changes, for instance. Not particularly fun. I do like gravel vacuuming, but the actual just changing of water is very monotonous. You're watching for flooding and that kind of stuff. So we automate that. But like feeding, very fun. I have automated that in the past, and I regret doing that for the most part. Automating for like raising up fry and stuff, because I'm still going to feed them in addition to that, makes sense. But just overall automating, you just lose touch with the tanks. And so that's so low of effort or energy that it no longer is fun. And that's not great either. So yeah, I think that's, I'm interested to see your guys' take on that and everything. But yeah, shrimp are great for that style of keeping. Yeah, and I think that has helped to dictate what I keep. I want low effort / energy animals, high return. Shrimp are great, snails are great for that, live bears are great for that. But then there's also fish. Like in general, I like fish that don't fight, because if they're not fighting, I don't have to use meds and I don't have to quarantine them off and get them healthy again and do other things. And so I think that a lot of us like that, but we look at it and we go, oh, well, I maybe need a high-tech tank. If you're new to aquariums, a lot of times you'd be like, well, I want to get that. Like, you might want what's going on back there. And I would say that while it's purling and doing everything and I'm using technology, it's pretty easy and low technology, I would say. In that I'm not doing anything too crazy over there. It's very simple. Everything's driven off of Casa Wi-Fi timers. And I made a statement earlier in the chat today that said basically Casa Wi-Fi timers run my entire business. My store, my fish room, my warehouse. Even in my house I'm using them just for like lights. And what I like about that is I can make changes with a phone or anything, and it'll be repeatable, and it sticks. And so like this thing right above my head here, that is an auto doser, and it runs with a Casa timer, and it basically puts in 1.5 milliliters of easy green per minute. So if you set it to 10 minutes, it'll put in 15 milliliters of easy green, right? And so that's real repeatable, real easy. You don't have to, and I have to do that every day. And so I've got light in there, I've got nutrients going in by that, and I've got CO2. Well, guess what? The lights and the CO2 are controlled by Casa timers. And so that also I can adjust of like, I think I'm getting a little too much algae. Let me just adjust by 1 hour. We'll do 1 hour less. And we'll do that for 3 months. And we'll see what we think. And you can do that with all of the tanks or all the buildings. And so in general, I like to pair Casa Wi-Fi timers with, I don't have any in front of me right now, but a 4-foot long power strip from Harbor Freight. They're $20 and they have 12 plugs, and the cord on them's 4 feet long, and they've got screw mounts. So you basically I'd screw it to the wall or underneath in the stand back there, and I plug it into the Casa timer. So now I can plug in both the lights that are on this tank. I can plug in the CO2 timer, so that'll take up 3 of those slots. I plugged in the UV sterilizer that's running on the tank, and so that's That's a fourth one. It'll only come on when the lights are on, so it saves me a little bit of bulb time on there, a little bit less. Um, and then you can, I'm running a whole rack of tanks for the 10 gallons. And all of the lights are connected to the same timer. And so it makes it really easy when you get into like the app and you just go, hey, I'm going to modify all of these lights. And so I've got 12 40 breeders. Well, they're on 3 Casa timers because basically it's 36 feet of tanks doesn't really all stretch into one, right? So, but with the changing of 3 settings, I can basically change half of the fish room. And it still has, I can still plug things in that I want on timers, additional lights. All the CO2 is plugged into them, so I actually have 2 CO2 things going to those. And so yes, while I'm using technology, it's not a, instead of, I would say a long time ago, it was low tech, high tech. We developed no tech. And then now, because technology has just become such a part of life and basically everybody can control their aquariums from their phones if they want to without too much lift. Now I don't think it's necessarily high tech. I think it's more energy. Am I running? So like the lights on this tank are at half strength. So even though they're Chihiro's lights that can go much more powerful, if I run them that powerful, they will just make tons of algae. And so I'm using half of the energy they can even put out so that I don't have to do more work. I actually don't want the plants to grow much faster. I want them to grow. I want them to be happy, but I don't want all the work that comes with that happiness there. And so you get that trade-off going off too much, and it no longer becomes fun, especially for someone like me that, I'm running now 30 aquariums. And if you amp up, if all 30 aquariums require 10% more maintenance, that can be, I need to add an extra 8 hours of maintenance, which would be not very fun. And so in general, I'm making small tweaks over the months, not so much days, but over months to go, what could make this a little better? And it might be raising a light or lowering a light. It could be intensity on the actual app of a light. It could be how much CO2. It could be turning it down a little bit. It could be more or less fertilizers. But these are all things that I basically can change and set it and forget it. And for many years, I did that basically manually. I put this much easy green in, or I dose this much easy green, and you do that once a week, and that's very low effort and low energy. I dose once a week, my plants grow, I do it again next week, I enjoy. And the only thing less energy than that is actually automating it. And at some point, it might make sense that you could purchase products to automate some things. And what you guys don't know yet is by automating and getting on top of things, it now has freed up time for me. And you haven't seen any of this in video yet, so it'll just be like, that sounds like it doesn't mean anything. But if I only have, on average, 30 minutes to an hour each day to interact with these aquariums, that's about 7 hours a week. That includes all the maintenance. That includes all the feeding, right? Well, that also includes all the breeding of fish. And so if most of that time is being taken up by scrubbing algae, feeding fish, dosing fertilizer, just dosing fertilizer on 30 aquariums might take 20 minutes, 10 minutes, something like that. And so by setting up some of these auto dosers and things, I get some of that money back. Or not money, but some of that time back. And so now what you'll be seeing is like, wow, the tanks are looking better, which you haven't seen yet. You would see that, like, I just pulled Corydora eggs today and started shooting a video about that. I've got mystery fry in another tank that I can't explain where they came from or what they are, but I shot video today of these microscopic fry that have been living off of the small fish feed. And I was feeding the small fish feed because I had a colony of orange shrimp in there. And so by using that small fish feed, which is amazing for the shrimp, the fry that normally would have just hatched and been tucked away in a corner and would have starved to death, got food, and then like, oh my gosh, I got like 20 fry in here. I don't even know what they could be. I was racking my brain. I'm like, nothing has really come in or out of this tank. Something must have, but I can't think of what moved. And so they're growing up, and I saw their bellies full of the food, and I get to film that. And so all of those small interactions are what is the benefit of the low energy aquarium. As I optimize things, I get time back. And I think for most people it's not really reasonable to expect to have more than 7 or 8 hours for your hobby per week. Now you could, but I'm a guy that might have more than one hobby or other obligations as you might. And so knowing that it's been a transition for over like a couple of years, I would say, knowing that my wife's telling me I look pale. Oh, thanks. The lighting is just dialed in differently. Anyway, knowing that I've lost my train of thought. Dang it. Knowing that my time has been limited, in that as I've just gotten older and taken on more responsibilities at work and things like that, every attempt to go, hey, I'll redo, like I'll make a change and I'll be able to spend 2 or 3 days a week focused on aquariums, and that's whole days, like 16 to 24 hours. And no matter what change I've made, taking aquariums out, doing things, I can do all of that, but it still didn't change the amount of time I end up having if I want to keep relationships with other people. Going to visit grandma, taking the dogs to the groomers, going to appointments, doing work, spending time with my wife. And so once I finally came to the realization that I'm not going to be able to dedicate more than about an 8-hour total time every week, I need to bend that hobby to that. And once I started doing that is where I started going, okay, now I'm just making the 8 hours more efficient. At first, I was just saying I'll spend more time, tricking myself going, I'll make the time. And I wasn't able to. And so now that we're bending the time to my will, I'm getting a lot more done, and it's proving to be beneficial. So, yeah. Interestingly enough, in one angle, I'm warmer, and on another angle, I'm more pale. Yeah, so we'll have to adjust that as we go on through the years. Is low effort another way to describe it? I'm afraid that if we talk about effort in the low capacity, that people will think it's neglect, and I don't think it's that. Because originally I did think it was similar to that. And I think if you're spending 8 hours working hard on anything, it's not exactly low effort. And so an example of that might be, maybe you go to work. A lot of us have been to work. And you know that there are days where you could work from the minute you walk through the door and work as hard as possible till you go home. You take your breaks, you take your lunch, but you've worked as hard as you could, and you know that you couldn't get any more work done in that 8-hour period. That's maximum effort, right? Where you could also go in and basically skate by that day. You're not feeling very well. There's not really a lot of projects for you to do. You answer a few emails, and it's just the day goes by, and that's all you got done, right? And that is low effort. And I don't think I'm talking about the amount of effort we put in, because I'm optimizing to still work as hard as I can on those 8 hours, but the energy needed to go into each aquarium isn't as high. And so I can keep more aquariums because per aquarium, the energy is low while the effort's still being high. And I realize that really does not seem intuitive, and it is different. And, but that it's taken a long time to get there and be like, it's not that I don't want to spend any less time with the aquariums. I want the results to be better for the time I am spending. And so if each aquarium requires less energy to be spent, that allows me to get more output. And so sometimes it could be like, oh, I need to, let's say, like a couple weeks ago, I was like, all right, I wanted to move the intake over to here. It was over here. CO2 is now down in this corner here, as opposed to it was over here. And I changed out the lighting, and I did those things, and I moved some escape around and all of that. And we caught out all of the gold barbs, because the gold barbs were snacking on my plants. taking bites out of the Anubias, where the rosy barbs don't do that. So just FYI. And so that might have taken a disproportionate amount of time. I remember it was a Friday night and I spent like 4 hours on it. But if I put 4 hours there, that means there's not 4 hours over here. And so the less often I have to put a long period on one tank means that all the tanks can kind of grow and get better, and I can spend time with them. And so I think that's an important thing. Yeah, low effort with proper husbandry. Yeah, I would say, yeah, I'm not advocating for neglect or anything like that. And in fact, if anything, I'm advocating for more efficiency. And I think for a lot of office jobs or jobs I've had in the past, for me, I'll speak for myself personally, definitely what I could probably do a week's worth of work in 8 to 16 hours if it was all lined up perfectly and you rewarded me proportionally. So what does that mean? That means, well, if I finish all of my work and someone pays me by the hour in 16 hours and only pays me in 16 hours, I am not rewarded for doing the work. I'm penalized, right? But if we all went to work and someone said, hey, if you can get all the work done for the week done, as soon as you're done, we'll pay you no matter what. You're now incentivized to work more efficiently. And with the aquariums, I am incentivized. I only get so much time, and so the more I can stuff into that time and the better job I can do, the more reward I get. It's not just the lazier I can be, I get the same reward either way. And so that's a different, it's, I would say high effort, but low energy. So that's a very different thing. So let's see here. Oh no. Put a big table there so the crusty old dogs can do a catwalk. Yeah. No, actually we spent Zenzo flew up here and we spent 5 days from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. basically every day in this fish room working incredibly hard. So I'm in a whole new desk setup. The plant's gone, as you can see. You don't know that we completely redid the 800 gallon. That was 2 days worth of work. What else did we do? Oh, there's all the center stuff is gone. There's stuff being ordered. Stuff's on the way. New lights are kind of mounted and not dialed in. It's the first live stream I've done since that. If I move my head too much, you can see right here, there's glare, so I got to keep my head up. So still dialing in lots, but we tore this place apart down to the bones basically and just really redid a bunch of stuff. I mounted a TV, so that was one of the big things you guys will see in a video coming up when I do a tour eventually. I mounted a 55-inch TV, which they've gotten so cheap. A Roku TV, it was like $250. And then the mount for it was like $30. So for $280, I have a 55-inch TV on the wall that I can throw YouTube up and listen to things like Steven's video and live streams and stuff while I'm working on my aquariums. Just another little thing, because part of my job is reviewing videos and checking things out, and if I can be passively doing that while working on the aquariums, that's another little bonus for me. And I highly recommend getting something in your fish room that is permanent that can do that. Whether it's a TV, an extra screen, a laptop, doesn't really matter. But if you can make your space more hospitable, or maybe you only got one aquarium, but put a good chair in front of it. Get it so you want to spend time. I think it's a very important thing. And ever since I moved my office out here, we've been working towards that. And we put in lots of stuff where incoming and outgoing, there's a lot of stuff that comes into this building for work. And that could be just like equipment. It could be prototypes. It can be just take a look at this thing. Hey, can you fix this thing? And those would just land on any flat surface. If, oh, that's our table over there. Oh, there's a chair. Oh, there's a thing. It would just land because employees would drop it off. And then I'd have to kind of set it aside somewhere so that someone could pick it back up. And maybe it goes to an entirely different person. And so now we have actually incoming and outgoing racks set up so that, yep, you set it on a rack, I'll know where it is. when it's time to review that product or do whatever we're going to do. We're also setting up some spaces for storage, and that would be things like hang-on back filters and lights and things that are needed for videos and reviews, and sometimes reference material of if I'm trying to explain something, it works better when you can show, yeah, like this one has this problem, this one does not have this problem, or you can see in the last version they had this, but now they have this. And we've been doing it for so long that, you know, when you start looking at 10, 12, 15 years of like maybe just Phoenix lights or Fluval products. And then sometimes we need reference materials for, you know, showing you how we got somewhere. And yeah, looks cleaner without the plant. I bet the plant look is nicer in real life, but on camera it looks more streamlined. Yeah, and the other thing is that was part of my time. Everything in this building is part of the fish time. And so it's like, oh, well, I got to fertilize and add water. So I'd take water from this tank and I put a little fertilizer in it, and then I would water the plant. And then, oh, that leaf's dying. And then, oh, this vine's getting too long. I got to wrap it around. So now you're spending 5 to 10 minutes a week on a plant, which is not the aquariums. And so that's 10 more minutes back. And it doesn't seem like a lot. It doesn't, you know, but they all those little things add up. And so, you know, if I have 7 hours, right, and you got 60 minutes, and so now you've got 420 minutes, 10 divided by 420. Yeah, by getting rid of that plant, I got 2% of my overall weekly time for aquariums back from just one plant, right? And any little change like that you can make starts like, well, those 10 minutes are now scraping algae on 2 tanks or gravel vacuuming 1 tank or whatever it's going to be. So yeah. Jody and someone else donated some memberships. I want to say thank you for that. Lynn came to the live stream. Welcome. I've been kind of in my thing here, in my world. Wally Freshwater Aquatics donated. Thanks, Warren. 5 more months till the Yeti and a new coin. That's right. That Yeti could be yours. That could be yours. Let's see here. Yeah. Let's see here. Trying to think where I want to go next, but yeah, I've got some big plans in the works. Then I think I'm gonna fly him back out in a couple weeks. And you know, at first I was worried that I was just being lazy, and then as we worked on it, we both realized like there's zero way. Like some of the projects you just can't do alone. Like physically, that thing cannot be moved. Like we had to move heavy furniture, ping pong table, couches had to move. Desks had to move. I was using forklifts. Like I moved the 2-ton Ceru stone pond. Like there was lots of big stuff going on, and it was gratifying just to be like, all right, it wasn't just like quit being lazy and get it done. It's like, oh, literally not enough time in the day to get it done. Need more people. Have to set this time aside. So that's good to get that done. That's why I skipped last week's live stream. Had a bunch of prep work to get done, ordering things, making sure I've got ducks lined up all in a row so that we can, you know, not be waiting on parts, which Chihiro's kind of screwed up Saturday. I had Dean on Saturday, and we were supposed to hang lighting and do all of that, but Chihiro's didn't arrive in time. It arrived on Tuesday instead of Saturday. And then I can't understand their shipping because I ended up needing more lights for the 800 gallon. And so I ordered 2 more. And so the first lights took like 14 days to get here. The second 2 lights I ordered arrived in like 46 hours. So I don't know what's going on. I paid for the same quick shipping, all of that. I don't know what's going on there, but you know, surprised us. Go like they're literally here. It took 2 weeks, and I even verified. I went back and looked. I paid the extra $20 for the shipping both times. So who knows what's going on over there? And I didn't tip either, so it wasn't like a magical tip this time or anything. Any tips for trying to work at a fish store with no experience? You know, keep some aquariums, obviously, and then just go in not knowing anything and just try and learn. That's all you can really do is try and learn. rely on coworkers, rely on the owner, and don't be afraid to say, hey, I'm pretty new at this, but I've got this going on. If you got good looking tanks, take pictures, because sometimes you can be like, I'm new, but I'm rocking this. And they go, wow, that looks better than what I got going. How'd you do this? How'd you do that? Right? Let's see. Yeah, not all roses for the Chihuahua lights. Yeah, as Zenzo's calling them, the Cheerio lights. The price is absurd. They're very expensive, but I do like them. And like I'm kind of glad the lights came a little bit late because Dean and I worked on other things, but we tried raising them up, and they're so bright. I bought the Vivid 3s, and the Vivid 3s are like $500 and some each, and the 800 gallon needs 6 of them if you don't hang them. And I'm not hanging them because when you, like right now, if they were on and they were being hung, you would get sunspots in your eyes. Like they're so incredibly bright that if you look over and then you look away, you're seeing spots, and that defeats the whole purpose of the aquarium. And then you'd be like, you should have bought the shades. I spent $200 on shades. They don't fix it. So I've got $200 in shades, but I'm kind of doing I'm doing a little bit of research for you guys, and I'll be able to tell you, like, yeah, don't do that. That's not worth it on that. Where some of the other lights, sure, run the shade on it. There's some things, but I'll definitely be able to give like an informed Corey opinion of, I like this. I don't know how to do that again. And I can weigh in on where I think the value is, and kind of what's interesting is there's different modes. The Vivid lights can actually do a different color spectrum than the slim lights that I'm using, which you would not have thought is a true statement, but that's the way it works. So thought that was a little quirky. Also learned that you can only map 5 lights to an aquarium. So I have 6, which is real frustrating. I'm sure they just put a limit of 5 because they're like, no one would ever need more than 5 unless you have an 800 gallon aquarium and don't want to go blind. Then you would need 6. So, and it's for the coverage, right? So I'm running 6 of them at half power because it's the spread of the light. You know, they're only this big, so they're like, you know, this big. And to get the right coverage, I need a lot of them. But I don't want to have an algae farm, so I'm running them at half. And at half hung up, you go blind, even with the shades. So, and I will say, if you had it on a low enough tank where you were taller than the tank, which not many people are, but the 800 gallon's so tall you're looking up at it, so that definitely is a problem. That, you know. Yeah, 3D print light shades. You're totally right. Except for a $550 light, you shouldn't have to DIY. Like, you pay that money because you don't have to DIY it. And they're, yeah. But yes, we did think about that, and that is an option technically, but it looks great sitting right on top. So, yes, I could probably print them, I could probably hang them, and then I could have 2 more to put over like the 230 gallon or something, and that is a thought. But for now, we're seeing what these do and the way they are. So, let's see here. A shame some goldfish online shops have closed down. East Coast Rancho and Goldfish Island. Yeah, I think what we're gonna see potentially, a shorter stand. That's what Zenzo said also. If you make the stand any shorter, you can't fit the giant cancer filters I'm running. I already cut the bottom out of the stand to get those inches back. So, yeah, can't really go shorter stand either. But I think we're coming to this big crossroads in probably everything in life. But I'm going to speak to the aquarium hobby. And that is that the price we want to pay and the logistics of moving stuff around and all that stuff isn't lining up much anymore. And it's because companies don't really know what to do. Like, I'm not even sure what to do. On one hand, you've got people willing to pay $12 for a Big Mac meal at McDonald's, and then you can go to Red Robin and pay 12 or 13 bucks and get just a superior product. And so when it comes to these goldfish, I don't think our expectations as a hobby, and this is, I want to be clear here. I want to be clear that I want to be clear what I want to say here. I'm being distracted by something I'm reading in chat too. Uh, this is not business Corey, like he's only trying to get more money. This is hobbyist Corey, where like I'm buying lights as a hobbyist, right? And what I think is going on is, how do I want to put this? Like, what we're willing to spend as hobbyists isn't keeping up with inflation or just like what it costs to run business. And unless you're in business, you don't know that, like, you know, when UPS workers, unionize and they just negotiate a contract, they get paid more money. Well, what happens when that happens? They get paid more money. Great. Yeah, good. Our costs went up by 5.9%. That's a lot of money. And so when you have like, okay, so that just happened, and you've got all these things happening like that, the cost of products have to go up. And so what you see typically is like with a goldfish, I think this is why Aquabit is dying and goldfish sellers are dying off. And in general, it's getting much more difficult because the cheaper services are getting slower because they're getting overwhelmed and they're not as good as they used to be. So like USPS priority used to be rock solid. Now there's a lot more like, ooh, got stuck. That's not great. But they're still cheap. Well, not cheap. They're still the cheapest option, right? You start going to overnighting, and there's plenty of times I pay for overnight shipping, and it's actually 2 days. Like, ooh, that's not great. And then there's, the surcharges for shipping and all of that when it comes to big products, right? And so, Jonathan says, people be broke. Yes, there are people that don't have much money. The other problem is that pricing on a lot of products haven't changed much, and the perception hasn't changed much. So, for instance, the best example I can give you is when I first started selling Easy Green, right? A bottle of Easy Green. To ship it to somebody cost me $5.40, right? Here we are 10 years later. Actually, it's 8 years. When I first developed it, it wasn't shipping. It was just in the store. But about 2 years later, we started shipping it. 8 years later, it's now $12.50. So more than 2x of the shipping. Now, the difference is when Easy Green launched, it was $14.99. Now, or at least a little while ago, it was $19.99, but we gave you twice as much. It was twice as concentrated. So originally, when we sold it, if you just bought a bottle of Easy Green and we charge you $5 shipping, right? You're like, hey, it's 20 bucks. I get my Easy Green, and we paid $5.40 to ship it. Well, now, or as of like a week ago, if you bought Easy Green, it's 20 bucks, and it costs $12.50 to ship it, right? Or it was 25 bucks because you still paid the $5 shipping, so 25 bucks, but we paid $12.50 minimum to ship it. And as shipping gets more and more expensive, we were just like, this is not sustainable for us. And so we actually had to raise the price on products. And we don't make any more money. That's the crazier part, is that, it's like things are getting more expensive, which means you guys have less budget. We're taking up more of that budget, but we also don't make any more money. The person that would make more money is the UPS worker, it's a good thing. They will now have more money to spend, their families, all of that. But someone's got to pay for it. And what we're finding is you might have been willing to buy a $50 goldfish online and pay $25 shipping or $30 shipping. But now when you start looking at overnight shipping, you're like $70. Like you might not be willing to spend 110 on that same goldfish, and the price of everything has gone up. And so I think what we're coming to a head where I think the hobby is going to naturally change to, as hobbyists, we won't have any less hobbyists. So we'll have the same amount of hobbyists. But instead of, on average, last time we did a poll, on average, people are keeping 7 or more aquariums. Maybe in 5 years, on average, we'll be keeping 5 or 4 aquariums each, right? But then we can afford to get the animals we want and the products we want. Brian says, when you say shipping, do you mean just shipping or the box, the staff, and the packaging? Oh, that's literally just the money I hand to UPS. That doesn't pay for the credit card when you run a credit card to buy it. That doesn't pay for the box, which box for like 50 cents. That won't include the tape. That won't include paying someone to actually do that thing, which, I think with the way we pay our people and the rent of the building and everything, I think we track it monthly, but I think last month it was like, it's 78 cents per item touched. Even that free sticker costs us, because we add averages in, 78 cents. And so by the time you add all of that, it just becomes like, hey, we're not making any money on that product. Well, we can choose to stop selling it, or we need to ask for more money for it. So that's what we do. Let's see here. I think people will be keeping more native fish. I don't, mostly because it takes work to go get them. I still believe on a certain level, like, going to work and earning your money is pretty efficient because you can count on it. Where if you've ever collected fish, you can go and you're like, I spent 5 hours, I caught 4. Like, oof. And they weren't the species I wanted. And so you would have to have it where fish get so expensive that going to work wouldn't make sense. And I think when I do think about this a lot, it's much easier if you think about the cost of things in hours. I used to do this when I was in college and I worked at the college. How many hours would I have to work to buy this Magic the Gathering card? How many hours or how many minutes of my day of going to work am I willing to spend on my food today? Right? And at the time, I think I was making $8 or $7.40, somewhere in there. And I was willing to spend $5 at the current time on food for the day. Well, not for the whole day, but for like lunch and dinner, right? And so that would have been roughly 40 minutes of work. I'm willing to spend 40 minutes of work on food. And so we might need to also think about that now, like if employees are making 20 or 25, like the retail store, we currently start people out at $25 an hour now. That example, that goldfish that we now set as 110 because it was $50 plus $70 shipping, right? So that's 120. That is now equal to basically 5 hours of work. I think people go, I'm not going to spend that kind of money for a goldfish. But when you think of it like, hey, would you help your friend for 5 hours to get that goldfish? You might say yes or no. But I believe that a rare goldfish that you really want to keep as a pet for the next 20 years is totally worth 5 hours. So I think there's a little bit of disconnect for us of, we like the hobby, we like fish, we like plants, we like things, but we might not like what they cost or not like them enough for what they cost. So 5 hours of work to get a goldfish, you might be like, I don't know. But 5 hours to get a dog or a cat, you'd be like, yes, I get this amount of enjoyment out of it. And so I just think we're going to see a little bit of a slimming down, not the hobby itself, but we're going to see a little more streamlined in what are you doing in your hobby so that you can get the products you want and not be forced to work with less than type of things. Let's see. Started experimenting on the lowest energy tank I could. Has a light on the timer. Small sponge filter filled with dirt, sand, and rocks, and lots of plants. Haven't done a water change in 8 months. Yeah. See, to me, and I'm not trying to call you out, to me, that is more towards low effort. And the reason I say that is not that I'm not a guy that says, hey, we got a water change every week or every day or anything like that. I just suspect that if I was keeping that aquarium, I would want to remove some of the debris and just things that could build up in that water sooner than every 8 months. I've had shrimp tanks go over a year without water changes. But in general, I don't usually go much more than 6 months, even on low stock tanks, out of I would call it fear, but then also I start noticing things are starting to go wrong a little bit. Not wrong, but different. And by changing maybe 30% of that water, it kind of revitalizes stuff. Whether that's just mineral buildup from topping off, which, yes, you can use RO water or distilled water, things like that. Or just, kind of hormones building up and algae. And in general, I'm not skilled enough to get my tanks looking the way I want them to look and not never, but do water changes so infrequently. Usually I'll find I would love to get a little bit of that algae out. I'd love to clean up that corner a little bit. And I find the best ways are kind of siphoning out and working on that, as opposed to if I just scrub the algae and don't change the water, I find it comes back faster than if I scrubbing the algae and then I also change some of the water. And so, yes, low energy, but I still find that I have to get in there and do stuff more frequently in 8 months for my style of keeping, which there are different people. Some people are totally happy with having a tank this size and having 6 rosy barbs, and that's it. To me, that's not fun for me. But there are people that are completely happy with that, and that is a different method of fish keeping than I practice. I don't put 100 fish in there, but I like enough to see that, see what I'm having fun with in there. The latest update on the store expansion, moving like molasses. We asked over a week ago, hey, what's the update? 7 days later, we finally get a reply from our fire company that says, hey, we have everything we need. We just need to submit for the permits. And we're like, great. What can we do to help this? Please do it as quickly as possible. That would be great for us. And they go, yep, we're moving it right along. And it's like, you can't be aggro at them because, you want them to keep working, but you're like, please work as fast as you can on that. And this was, so they said they were all ready to submit the paperwork, and this was on Wednesday. And, we're thinking, why can't we submit it Thursday or Friday? They said, instead, we'll be submitting early next week. And it's like, okay, I hate when, just like I want to get stuff out of the warehouse as fast as possible and that kind of stuff. I hate when there's extra days of lag for seemingly no reason. It's our retail store business is in their hands basically of you're crushing us. Any faster would be amazing. So, maybe they're just they're actually not ready and they say they are, or, I don't know, but that's the update. The update is, hoping that things will keep moving along and hopefully they're going to speed up. No work has actually started on that project yet. We're still, I don't know when it exactly started, but we might be a month into with this fire alarm contractor, and we're thinking about submitting permits. Oh, yikes. But the other people ghosted us, and in general, this seems to be an industry we need to start, because if you could start a project within 6 months, you're top 5 overall. How does any business ever open in Edmonds? What killed us is our change of use. The space we're opening expansion was zoned for office space before, not retail. And so because we changed the use of the space, we had to do all the updates and all that. If we just said, hey, if it was already retail and we moved in, they'd be like, yep, you don't need the HVAC system, don't need the new fire alarms, which I go on that tangent, makes me real angry because it's like, so we actually don't care about safety. Like, it either is critical and we're going to save lives, or it's not critical. And to me, it feels like it's not critical of like, oh, it was a retail store and you're a retail store, you don't have to get it up to code. But, oh, it was an office and now you want to be retail? Now you do have to get up to code. Meanwhile, our new space will be more up to code than our current store. So the expansion has to be at the current standards, but the old place doesn't. Irritating. Let's see. Just wanted to thank Candy for getting my account straightened out. I got my Yeti mug with my order. Well, congratulations, Rusty. 5 years is a commitment. And so hopefully you're liking that thing, because those things are expensive. Like, anyone that's ever had to make custom Yetis, you kind of go like, oh, even when you buy hundreds at a time, they don't get much cheaper? Well, that you'd think they would, but no, you save a few dollars off of retail. Like, oh, but you do get a logo on them, so there is that. But I decided, like, I want something tangible people can carry around at that 5-year mark. Let's see here. What's the deal with brine shrimp being out of stock? We're poor. That's really what it comes down to, is we're poor. Trying to launch new products and moving the warehouse, and the economy not doing what it normally does. We were poor. And so we had to make choices on what products to order, what was running out first. The other problem on top of that is that brine shrimp egg sales keep growing. And normally that's a good thing, and it is a good thing. However, to keep brine shrimp in stock, we need more freezers. And so we had to order more freezers. So the freezers are being built, and they will be coming, and we have to put in more circuits to hold those freezers, and then we can bring in more brine shrimp also. So we're honestly like 2 months out from brine shrimp. If I say 2 months, there's a chance it'll come in earlier and you'll be happy. But we're like 2 months out. And yeah, we've got small ones, and retail partner stores have them available. Like, we saw more in our physical store. And yeah, it's mostly like, if we're being honest, I didn't have an extra $100,000 to order brine shrimp in a frozen container and get the additional freezers and put in the extra electrical. Because what I guess what's not expressed well is the profit margin on brine shrimp eggs is terrible for us. Like, because we have to spend a lot of energy keeping it frozen, and we have to move it from country to country frozen, and they're an expensive product to keep them in that high a quality. It's just like, yep, that's unfortunately the way it is. So, yeah. So brine shrimp eggs need refrigeration to stay their best quality. They do, yeah. You want to keep them in a stasis mode, and the best possible way is to keep them frozen. Most brine shrimp eggs are just kept in a warehouse, not temperature controlled. So you get much poorer hatch rates. So and it costs, every step of that brine shrimp egg costs more money to keep these good hatch rates. And so the colder you keep it, the better it is. And not any one single thing. Like, you could make one change. The problem is, like, the refrigeration or the freezer on the way over, they're sitting in a can, like as in a cargo container. Well, if that cargo container is on the top of the stack on that boat, and you're in a hot country coming over, it might be 200 degrees in there. Those brine shrimp are like, hey, it's time to wake up. And then they're not going to hatch. So we got to keep them frozen on the way over. And then if we're going to spend that kind of money, we want to keep them fresh in our warehouse so that when we ship them to you, yeah, they're a couple days and like, yeah, they got to 110 or whatever. They're fine. And then you put them in a fridge or you keep them in your fish room, keeping them devoid of oxygen and not letting them get crazy hot is the best way to keep them fresh. They can do both those and not necessarily become activated, But if they do activate, then they're completely useless, and you don't want to risk that kind of stuff. And so, yeah, that's, we were talking about alternatives, and I was in somebody else's stream, and I said, hey, you can get comparable eggs to what we sell, kind of, from like a brine shrimp direct. You got to get their 90+% hatch rate. They're pretty expensive, and then the shipping's $35. So by the time you go, wait, that's a lot of money compared to what you guys sell. Like, yeah, we're not making much on these brine shrimp eggs, but they are good to get better fish in the hobby, and they're a good product, but we don't have the reputation to really be like charging what they could charge. Like, hey, they're $35 a can. Like, what? So, and being that they're a lower margin item, of the things we were bringing in, it was like, are we going to bring in more like the 1 pound containers of our food, the new products we want to launch, or are we going to bring back brine shrimp? And it made sense of like, well, with all the additional work with the brine shrimp eggs, let's do that and then that. And so the difference is a span of about a month. We put one thing on the boat, and then a month later, by the end of December, we placed the order for the brine shrimp eggs. The problem is Chinese New Year and things like that. So there's 2 or 3 weeks of no work getting done. And so even though we're out the money, we don't have the product. So it's all, this is all business. I'm not here to complain. I'm explaining why. So like, yes, you have to invest money, and then you get to sell it. And if you do things right, then you make money. That is how it works. And I'm not complaining. I'm just trying to let you guys know, like, as a small business, we don't have unlimited funds to be like, just launch it all. Let's do it all. And as we grow and wholesale grows, more stores bring us on. It's more and more we have to keep, which is more and more freezers, which is more and more levels. So, and everything grows, right? It's not just brine shrimp that went up. It's like, oh, well, if everything is kind of growing, you got to keep more and more and more, and you got to manage it all. And so I think we do, I shouldn't even say I think, I know we do an exceptional job compared to the wholesalers and stuff we buy from. We have very few outages. And we just try and do our best. So let's see here. I would pay more to maintain access to those eggs. Yeah, you just buy more when we have them. As a good first step. And then I also don't want to gouge people either. So I actively lobby for you guys to try and, can we buy in a bigger quantity? Can we get the price down? And we do, instead of prices just running away since COVID, if you look at our prices, it's been very stable, in my opinion. And they haven't run away, like chicken eggs. You can have chickens in your yard right now, and they're real expensive. You can't, well, I mean, I guess you could breed brine shrimp. That can be done, but for most people, it's going to be hard to make that many brine shrimp eggs, and proportionally, chicken eggs more expensive, even though they're easier to get a hold of. But we do everything we can to keep the prices down because we want it to be a sustainable hobby. We want to leverage the group mentality by all of you guys supporting us in videos and by buying from us and just showing up and sharing and doing that. Hopefully we can, keep everybody employed, keep the products coming in, keep developing some stuff. And yeah. Have we ever considered doing an IPO and getting some quick cash and majorly expand? That's what I'll do right before I go out of business. Yep. I don't believe that I could manage such a thing, and I think it would be the thing that would put us out. Like, often, I would say weekly, I get emails from venture capital companies that would love to buy Aquarium Co-op and all the intellectual property. I don't take it, not interested. I'm interested in doing a slow and steady. My goal is not to be owned by basically Spectrum Brands that owns everything. Like, people don't realize Petco, PetSmart, Chewy, Marineland, Aqueon, Tetra, and basically like every other brand is all owned by the same company. And then we wonder, like, why are they getting worse? Because there's no competition anymore. It's small guys versus gigantic corporation that buys everything up. And so if we truly, and I still remain committed, if I truly want to see this hobby grow and thrive and get better, I have to not just go where the money is. I have to go, sometimes you got to take like, I gotta take the harder road off to the side here because this is jammed up with these giants. I gotta go and we gotta go around. So yeah, be like Gigazoo. That's right. Be like Gigazoo. That's a rad store. Is there a reason you use Paracleanse in your trio over something like Copper Safe? Yeah, because it works. Copper Safe in my testing has never been as reliable as Paracleanse for the things that I wanted to treat. In my opinion, Copper Safe does nothing for internal parasites, and that's the main reason for Paracleanse. So yeah, there are probably 500 different combinations of meds that could be used, and whoever wants to spend the $50,000 to $100,000 in testing to figure it out, you should launch that. But being that I've got a group of meds that works for what we do at the store and all of that, and the store basically funded and paid for it, I don't go out of my way to go, well, what if I spend 20 grand over here and be like, oh, yep, that doesn't work at scale. We just wasted 20 grand. And so until a med goes out of production or there's a radical change or something like that, I won't invest a bunch of money into finding different meds to work together because that's not a good use of our funds. I hope somebody else does it because that would be great. That would be great if someone else was doing that kind of testing and figuring it out as well, because then we could share. But at the same time, I also don't have the reason to need that. Like, mostly people have preferences, like, why don't you use Pumafix and Melafix? Like, because they haven't been working for me. Like, well, they work for me. Like, great, use them then. But when I test them and we A/B test with, we split a group of fish that come in, and we have to do that a few times, wait for them to get ick or wait for them to get a fungal infection, and then we test random product versus our known method. If it doesn't outperform, we don't switch to it. And oftentimes you'll get it like with Melafix and Pumafix, like, oh, it literally does nothing. It literally does nothing. So we don't work with those products. And it could be, and I always say this, it could be we use it wrong, we do it wrong, our water structure's wrong. That could be. But it also makes no sense. You just end up being a thing that sells everything and you don't know how the meds work. There's plenty of online businesses, I see that all the time, like, well, it's either I don't know how to get that, I don't know how to get that product to work, or that product doesn't actually work. There's some products where it's like, I haven't met a single person where that actually works. So, have I ever seen meds obliterate plants? I haven't really used any meds that kill plants, so no. Copper Safe, I also like invertebrates. I don't like all the meds we sell are plant and invertebrate safe, so I like that. Let's see. And be consistent in the offering. I can't tell you how many of my breeding programs are reliant upon those brine shrimp eggs. Again, larger containers, and I would gladly pay more. The problem is it doesn't make sense to make bigger containers. Let's say I made a 1 pound container, right? It will literally cost you the same amount as buying 4 containers, right? It will use the same amount of metal basically, and we won't save any money. In fact, it'll cost us more money because we'll have to do a run of like, okay, we got to make 1 pound containers. Minimum runs 5 or 10,000 of those. We'll have to pay someone to do the artwork. So we will expend more money, and you won't save any money. It won't be better for the environment, and it's just a bummer. Now, if the company comes back and goes, well, if you made bigger cans and you bought more, we'd save your money, I would reply back within 2 minutes and be like, yes, please do that. But there's literally no savings on the table. So just buy more. And most people go, well, if I buy a ton, will I get more savings? Like, there's no more savings. This is a product that has no more savings, unfortunately. The best you can do, review our products. You'll get 5% discount codes and be a member. You can stack those. We're willing to basically reward you for those things. That's the best we can do. So, yeah. Someone asked what the most profitable product is for us. It's usually not any one product. It's the way you buy products. And so for the most part, okay, so here's the actual thing. What item gives the best return for the co-op? Sounds like you guys sell everything the lowest possible. We don't go out of our way to be the lowest possible on everything. We try to be fair priced on everything. I would say things that aren't bulky and spending lots of money. So if you get a box that's this big to your doorstep, as long as you didn't pick really awkward things to put in there, That's much better than just one thing or a bunch of really odd shaped things, right? And I know that doesn't really help you a whole lot, but that's just what it comes down to. Have I considered a partnership or perhaps an employee-owned approach for investment? No, I don't want any investment. When you bring on people who invest, they expect returns. I ran Aquarium Co-op basically at a loss last year so that we could launch new products, so that we could move the warehouse, so we could build for the future. Investors go, no, 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 I want my return. And so that's where you see these companies have to, have these big, massive shifts because we see what's going on. We know that selling at a less return to stores makes sense long term. We know that shipping closer to our customers makes more sense, even though it takes $1 million to make that move and things like that. We will be able to recoup that over the years. Now, because of spending $1 million and moving a warehouse and doing all that crazy stuff, the bad part was, yep, we got to be out of brine shrimp for a couple months. Like, that's pretty low stakes. Or pretty low, like, price to pay for it. And so we're still doing commerce, still doing fine. It's a cash flow issue. And yes, investors can bring in cash, but they have expectations. And just when you have more cash doesn't mean you spend it well. In fact, most times what you see, the more money someone has access to, the less efficiently they spend it, right? That's why you end up with, like, why does this company have 72 different vice presidents and they're all making $500,000? Like, well, they have lots of money, so they spend it. The less money you have, typically, the more efficiently you spend it. And we don't like taking on debt. We don't, I don't want to bet the future of my employees' lives on brine shrimp eggs or something where it's like, oh, it fell into the ocean, but we have insurance, we'll get that in a year. Or, the product was manufactured wrong and that's a problem. Or turns out no one wants it, right? Like, you guys still love the magic small fish feed. It's amazing. Over 6,000 different people have bought it. And yet only 1,500 different people have bought the community pellet. I'm convinced the community pellet is far better. As in, for the average tank that people have, it's an amazing food and it's a staple. The problem, I think, is I don't have it in 1 pound bags. So you feel like you're going through it faster. And I think because the small fish feed launched first, people bought that and they love it. But they haven't, people go in buying cycles. The people in this chat might not be in that buying cycle, but on average, people buy, there's a lot of customers who will buy, like, every 3 months or every 6 months. And so they haven't even come back around yet to be like, hey, let me add that on, let me try that. So, yeah. Anybody else having troubles when trying to send a super chat? I saw one come through earlier. I actually thought I turned them off. So, I loved your store. Thank you, says Beginner Fish Breeding. Well, thank you. Thank you very much. I also don't want to talk about the money part of it and all that because, well, one, I like to talk about fish, and two, I don't want employees or you guys to get worried. Like, we got it handled. We got great people at Aquarium Co-op. We're doing great. We're doing great things, and this is what we're talking about right now is real normal stuff. You have to react to market conditions. You have to react to, shipping changes. You have to react to Chinese New Year. You have to react to, we're going to do this big shift in the company, and that, it's all stuff we anticipated and we knew would basically happen. Honestly, we didn't know that you guys would love the new fish foods as much as you did. So, it sold much faster than we anticipated. Well, a couple of things. We also didn't expect it to get delayed at the port for 2 months. Like, we ordered those two foods. They should have been like 6 weeks apart. Instead, they were 1 week apart because the first one got delayed so much and the other one went so fast that it was like boom, boom. And so that creates ripples in the cash flow, because it should have been, oh yeah, we sell that for 6 weeks, get money, launch the new food. You guys go, oh, let me try that. As we're getting money, we're placing the order for the first one. That'll land here. Instead, it was like, boom, boom. Oh gosh, they're selling really well. Have to place a giant purchase order. So that's, but we can't control the ports. There's strikes and there's other things going on. And so you just go, well, we'll do what we can. And in previous years, we handled that a little better because we didn't have the money wrapped up into moving. We had more of a war chest to go, okay, let's buy more. We won't run into that little problem. So, will you eventually make a food for bottom feeders that doesn't float? Or do you already have some? We have some we have more samples in production. We've been testing some. We're trying to test some more. Yes, it is actively being worked on. I don't have an ETA when we'll launch it yet because I want to get it right. What I don't want to do is launch both of those foods and their hits and then just do what people have done in the past, like just get another one out and it's not a hit. Because then you go, ooh, maybe Aquarium Coop's losing it? What is this garbage? And so it could take me years to find what is the best formula for that sinking food. And I don't want to rush it. I know it will sell. And so yeah. What I'm saying is when it's ready, it'll come out. And when I say, hey guys, it's ready, you know that I put it through the paces and I've got a product that you guys can feel safe on ordering if your fish like the other foods. Because there's one out of a billion people goes, hey, my fish don't like that food. And I go, that's crazy. Okay. Yeah. Do the community pellets stay in the water column a long time like the nano pellets do? Yeah, they actually float for a long time. If you got lots of flow, they'll do this. In fact, I'll feed the fish behind me. I already fed them earlier today, but I'll go grab... Oh, it's all the way on the other side of the... I'll be right back and I'll feed them. You can see it happen. I just put them into a big old jar. I empty like 2 or 3 of them at a time because I feed so much of this. So the rosy barbs are kind of hitting it. I know I'm standing like in the way, but the rosy barbs, let me get my head out of the way. As they're hitting it, it will bounce up and down in the water. Let me see if I can zoom in with my camera here. Can I enhance? Let me kind of get it off me. And so you kind of see how it's all in the water, but you see kind of at the middle right there, it's starting to come upwards. That's because it wants to be a floating pellet, but because the outflow of the filter is right there, you can see it hitting the pellets down, they float back up. But some will float down, just like the Magic Small Fish Feed. And usually, you can see on this side, see how it's coming back up because the flow slowed down, so they're going back up. So yeah, this is a second mount. I put kind of a lot of food in there a second time, just so you get the visual effect of it. But yeah, so that's I honestly believe for most people, this is the size of food that, like in 5 years, this will be the pillar one that like everyone's feeding a lot of. And then nano, like small fish tank people will be feeding the small fish feed, and breeders will be using a ton of that. But the food formulas are very close to each other. And so I think people are going to settle into this long term. But, proof will be in the pudding. You guys will tell me when that happens. So, yeah, let me zoom back out here and fix my camera angle a little bit. There we go for now. Maybe down a little bit. Sure. Sure, why not? Okay. Let's Let's see. I'm a little disappointed in the lack of hot dog math today. Tell me about it. Chris Lukup's here. It is late in Germany. Chris has been working on his crayfish book. I saw a little sample of it the other day. It's quite in-depth. It's going to be 500 pages. And I told him I hope it sells well. You should all tell him to make more videos. It's been 5 months since he released a video, and I think he does really good work. So he's hoping to make one the next couple days. He just needs a little more encouragement. Yeah, those rosy barbs are gorgeous. Yeah, the longfin rosy barbs are to die for. I got some females in there. We caught them out of the 800-gallon. And, yeah. Also, the Chihiro's Light helps. I discovered Chihiro's Lights actually when I was in Germany, and I bought Chris one, and I was like, wow, this makes these cherry tetras look really good. And then I bought one, and didn't like it, because it didn't make my Congo tetras look good, and I tried on a few things. There's certain fish it doesn't do anything for. And then I tried on some other fish, like, oh, okay, it's looking okay. And then what I fell in love with personally, and it doesn't show well in this tank, I actually fell in love with the color it makes the plants. So while it does fish, looks good too, color of plants was a big thing for me. Let's see. Is there a way to clean the easy flow air collar after some time it stopped being as fine as a new one? Yeah, you want to look for the video of using a syringe. In fact, where did I have them? I thought they were on my desk. Well, I've got drawers by my desk now. The problem is I just don't have anything stocked. You can see the drawers down here. In fact, they're so new I don't have it stocked yet, but I could show you if I had it. Anyway. Use a syringe with a little piece of tubing to just blow some water through there. Works great. Lisa says, I'd love to see more about the nano tanks in your office, Chris Lukup. It was nice to see him when I was there visiting. Yeah, your tanks look cool. Found some guppy fry today. Quickly threw in some ACO Magic small fish feed. I just ordered a jar of extreme community pellets because they sink. Hopefully the new food takes long enough for me to need it. Let's see. Hopefully the new... Oh, yes. I don't think I'm going to release small pellets that sink. It would be like I think like a wafer or a stick. I haven't decided 100% on the form of it, but yeah, I think for most bottom dwellers, they don't want tiny pellets. I think they want a little bit... Well, I want to be able to cover things that want to rasp on stuff. So, let's see. Luna says, I like to clean them with a toothbrush, clean the pores and air collar, or in my tank with the exposed air collar, my snails clean it for you. Interesting. Yeah, I do a little bit of a brush, which I linked them on my, I need to get them over here, but I linked them on my Amazon list, these little brushes that work really well too. Yeah. Let's see here. What's my opinion on bug bites fish food? I think it's okay. Well, first let me always start with I think almost all fish foods on the market are good enough. Let's just be clear. Like if you're just going like, will my fish eat it? Will they live? Will they breed? Will they do stuff? Yes, pretty much every food out there, except for Wardley's garbage. But when it comes to like availability and cost, like, yeah, Flu Ball, I don't know about that. They might be tripping. They have a hard time supplying us when we were trying to sell it. And, you know, I've read some studies, which I don't know that that's enough to be totally conclusive, but they found that too much of the soldier fly larva was not beneficial. Small amounts, like up to 15%, was better than not having it, but like over that, they noticed it wasn't as good. Now, was that a study done by somebody with an agenda? Was it just a fluke? I couldn't tell you. But in my experience, fish like it just fine. I'm more focused on like how clean does it feed? What is the mode that it feeds? Pricing, because those are what matter to me, because there's a million foods out there. And so I'm usually trying to save energy. And so my first thing that I've always held myself to is, why would I buy this food instead of frozen food? Right? So when you look at some products and you're like, this stuff's $30 a pound, you're like, I literally can buy frozen bloodworms for like $16 a pound, or frozen brine shrimp, or whatever. That seems like it's double. And so then it becomes, is it so good that is it as equal to that? Because I save the time of going to the freezer, but is it as good? And the answer is usually not. But like the magic fish feed kind of takes it so I don't have to hatch out brine shrimp. That's worth something to me. And then the pellet, I'm not sure I can say this pellet is directly better than frozen. It is in some ways, but I still feed some frozen. And I think it'd be real hard to make an argument that like any dry food is gonna be better than a live or a frozen outside of allergies, outside of if I didn't have a fridge or freezer in my fish room, convenience factor. It's a trade-off of money and time for almost everything in life at this point. That study was funded by soldier flies. That's right. Yeah. Too much of us is bad. Don't do that. Has the addition of tissue culture plants... how has the tissue culture plants been for the store? I got my Crypt Nuri last week, and I'm already getting good growth. If we were to put it in a percentage, less than a 1% of overall what we do at the company. So, and plant, even if you just like went down to plants, it's like, yeah, we sell a tissue culture for every 942 non or potted plants. Like, oh, in general, they're more expensive, but you can get some cooler stuff in there, like the Nuri. Some people love it, and so it's a little bit of a diverse thing, but I could see it being a real pain real quick here. Like, I don't bring politics into this, so I won't. I will just talk business. If there's a tariff on Canada and they retaliate with any tariff, all tissue culture from Tropica come in from Canada because that's where their facility is on this side of the world. So I'm not sure that like tissue cultures could withstand another 25% increase of like, oof. Like we like tissue cultures. I don't know if we like $20 tissue cultures. Like that's already at 15 or so. It's like, ooh, those are a little spendy. So we'll see where that goes. Let's see. Ever had Siamese algae eaters? Yeah. I was trying to make sure I read that. Ever had Siamese algae eaters? Yeah. Good for eating blackbeard algae and hair algae if you keep them hungry, and when they're younger, they do a little bit better of a job. But yeah, I like the fish. I don't love the way they look. Like with these guys eat hair algae. They don't really like to eat blackbeard algae. I literally fell in love with this fish before I knew it ate algae. And so the fact that it eats hair algae and looks this good is kind of the best algae eater on the planet. So far. I mean, that I know of, right? Because tomorrow maybe there's going to be like, wait, this Corydora be eating blackbeard algae? Who knew? No one knows it. So, what's my most memorable or cherished milestone for the Aquarium Co-op? I feel like I can come up with one, but I don't know that it could be the best one, knowing that I don't have enough time to think about it. What was a big milestone for me? I mean, there's lots of different ones. I'm trying to think of one that really made, like, I can't believe this is working. Usually I cite Easy Green because everybody was telling me it can't be done, you fool. And then like every company copied it and was like, yeah, we do that too. So Easy Green is a big milestone. Like we started selling it online, and then people are just like, yeah, it just works. Like most of you won't realize, rewind like 10 years ago, and people would be thinking you're crazy and all-in-one fertilizer. Yeah, right, buddy. Yeah, right. Probably how we're gonna feel in 10 years with some kind of like dirted tank type of method. I still think at some point we'll find a perfect mix of dirt, clay, baking process that gives you all the benefits of having like a dirted soil tank or like an ADA soil tank without the breakdown part. Someone will figure it out so that like, oh, this ball that gets fired at this temperature with this specific ingredients is basically like it'll hold up for 12 years in an aquarium and deliver nutrients at this rate. Like when they figure that out, it's like, wow, that kind of just wins. No, hands down, that's got to win. But there's enough trade-offs right now of like, well, you know, we're only getting like 2 years, and it can run real hot at the beginning, and it can be a mess. And when someone figures that part out, that'll be amazing. I mean, root tabs are similar, but they don't last as long, right? Like they're kind of a breakdown in the substrate thing. So, yeah. How long can tissue culture for something like a crypt last? Like the shelf life for sellers before you have to plant it or lose it? Depends on how you keep it. If you keep it refrigerated and with light, which you're going, hey, most refrigerators aren't lighted. Some of the tissue cultures, months. Some don't even have to be refrigerated and can sit on your desk for months. And then there's some that like, oh, they don't do very long at all. The other thing is, depending on how fast they're selling, you could get one sent to you that, oh wait, that's already 4 months old, and then it's, you know, packed in the thing, and people are like, that's great. If you sell it really quickly, it is. If you don't sell it really quickly, starting to peter out. That's not so good. Opening the register for the first time wasn't really well, I mean, that is a milestone, but I would say paying myself money was a pretty good milestone, because we were in year 2 before I started paying myself $500 a month, because my wife supported us financially. Like the store didn't make money. Everything we made went back in. And so when I could start the first year that I actually paid myself, which was in year 2, I think, my tax return was, I made $14,000. That is not enough to live. That is literally top ramen behind your display tank. You buy top ramen or noodle cups, because there's cup of noodles. There's cup of noodle, really. You buy the flats of cup of noodle, and you're eating those for lunch because you're. And the reason I started paying myself $500, because my wife, girlfriend at the time, I wanted to pay my half of the rent. We lived in a cheap place of $1,000 a month, and she was covering all of it while we launched the store, and I wanted to pay my half of the rent. And actually, that wouldn't even have been a half at that point, because we moved to a place that was like $1,400 because she had gotten promoted. So I wasn't even paying half of rent. So that was a big milestone, though, to be like, hey, the thing is actually making some money. Like, not just open, it's there. We're actually making some money. And then, you know, as we got better and tried to get better, like, hey, let's make enough where I'm not going into debt. And that was able to happen. So that was good. Chris Lukup says he's had Anubias in a cup for a year. Yeah, Anubias is pretty slow. Yeah. Can you use the ramen flavor packets to hatch brine shrimp? I thought that's what you get when you buy the shrimp flavored top ramen, right? Doesn't it? I thought that little packet was brine shrimp. That's how you get the shrimp flavor. Oh man. Even changing the flavors of cup of noodles doesn't make it any better. So as you guys know, I have to optimize everything on the planet. And in my opinion, there's 2 ways that in a fish store you can optimize a cup of noodle. It has to be quick, right? And it has to be something that stores dry, because I'm eating in a fish store and I have a microwave and that's it. It is freeze-dried garlic. You put a little bit of freeze-dried garlic in there, and that really dresses up a cup of noodle. Or hot sauces, or chili oil. You can basically like, let's make this burn so I can't taste it anymore, and that's a different flavor. Or you can put so much garlic in it that it kind of like, if you eat enough garlic, it starts burning. Like, that's a different flavor. And then you got normal. So, yeah, you start eating enough, and I'm going to tell you right now, not healthy, not good. It is cheap. That's what you do sometimes, a small business, to make ends meet. Yeah. Let's see here. What are my thoughts on guppy disease and how to treat it? I keep losing a guppy every 2 days. Every day or two, I guess. Use the Med Trio, no success. If you're having guppy problems and the Med Trio hasn't taken care of it for you, first and foremost, when you're having any problem with fish, look at water parameters. Make sure they're warm enough. Make sure they're clean enough. Make sure that waste isn't too bad. And if you haven't done a water, let's say all that checked out and you haven't done a water change, do a water change anyway. Do a gravel vac. Cover those bases. Then I recommend using salt to treat it. And you might be like, well, I got tons of live plants. Like, well, you might have to use a quarantine tank. But salt is a cure-all, basically. It treats so much stuff. And guppies in general like to be in salty water. And even if you use a lot of, like, I use the Aquarium brine shrimp salt. In fact, I had some guppies kind of freaking out because the water change system hasn't been going because it's been too cold. And they were like, ooh, they're starting to get a little bit of imperfections on them. Added salt to it. And it's going away. So, let's see here. Dang it. I read something. I was going to talk about it, and then it left my brain. Where did it go? What causes pH crash in a well-seasoned, established planted tank? We have a video on that. Let me see if I can find the name of it real quick for you. And what you're describing is old tank syndrome. So let me look up my channel, and let me find it. Old tank syndrome. I think we have a blog article too. Yeah. I have a video from 6 years ago called What is Old Tank Syndrome? Basically, I'm going to distill it down because that's a 7-minute video. I'm going to distill it down into like 30 seconds. Basically, as you feed fish and bacteria breaks down the waste from the fish so that it becomes non-toxic, in that process, chemically, it makes some acids in the water very slowly. And if you have enough KH and minerals in the water, it balances out, counteracts that. But eventually, you've got plants and they're consuming your minerals, and you're feeding your fish, and those are being converted, and you're making some acids. If you don't replenish those minerals fast enough, well, you feed, and the water gets a little more acidic. And every day it gets a little bit more acidic. And eventually, the pH has crashed. And we typically mean like, oh, the pH is really low in there, because we don't have the minerals to counteract it. So you can do a water change, and maybe you do a 50% water change and it comes up a little bit, but you need to change more water, bring it up more and more and more, or add more minerals. Usually what happens is you get people that fall into a trap of, I change my water 20% every week or something like that. But that doesn't replenish enough minerals for the plants and to counteract the feeding. And so while they're doing all the right things, they're still falling behind. So imagine, the easier way to explain this is, think of it like money. You say, hey, I go to work every day or every week I get paid and I get $100. But the problem is your bills cost you $102 every week. And so even though you're going to work and you're getting paid, you're falling behind by $2. Well, eventually you can't make rent or you can't make a payment for something, and that's when it crashes. Eventually, you had enough weeks where you lost $2 that you're $100 or $200 behind, and it crashes. And that's what's happening in your aquarium. Eventually, you're running at, you don't quite have enough to make it through the week every week, that it comes down far enough that you hit a crashing point. And so you can watch that video, and it'll just explain it a little bit better for you as well. I've used level 1 salt treatment without killing my plants. Good to hear, Lori. I still want to spend some time as a collective community on the forum testing that and going, what plants with how much salt makes sense. Trying to sell my CW127s. I only have 15 babies. They are not easy to breed. I think I can get a few spawns a month. Should I try and sell them on the cheap? So whenever it comes to money, ask yourself this. Take the money equation out, as in, if you just said, what should CW125 sell for? Or 127, sorry. uh, ask how many hours do you think someone should trade for it? And how many hours did you put into it? So if you go, well, it takes me 20 hours, and let's say you value your recreational time at $10 an hour, right? Then you go, okay, well, if it took me 20 hours to make 50 babies, you're $200 into it, right? Then they should be selling for what, 12, $13 a piece, something like that. Now, there are people that, I don't agree with this, but they'll go, well, I'll just only charge $200 a piece for these fish, and I only got to sell 3 of them a year, and I'll make my $600. I don't think that's what the spirit of the hobby is myself. I like to share, and I like to make things affordable just so that I feel I'm rewarded for my time, and then I can play with the next product or fish. And so for me, if I would be trying to make sure it was worth my time. And then, like I had one breeder that supplied me for a very long time, and they love breeding fish. Their policy was they wanted $5 for any fish they bred, whether it was a guppy or whether it was a fish worth $1,000. I want $5 each. And that worked out well for her and myself. Like, it sucked when it was guppies. It was real cool when it was real expensive fish, but overall, it worked out well. And so maybe you just go, you know what? These Corydoras are rare, and I will sell them for $10 each. You buy a group of 10 or more, they're $8 each, and maybe that's your price. Like with my Vienna guppies, I paid $500 to get the first trio, or first 6 of them. We routinely sell them. Let me look it up. I'll tell you what we sell them for right now. We continue this price. Let's see here. We go to products. If you were to walk into the store, if we have any right now, you would pay $19.99 for a pair of Vienna guppies. Now, I know that they're pretty easy to breed. I know that I get a lot of enjoyment out of it. I know I want to share, and it feels like a okay price to me. So $20, even though I paid a lot. And so that's what you're trying to decide for yourself. What would make it worthwhile for you to keep doing? Because you're probably liking doing it. And what would make it so you can move a lot of them and not have to, like, the worst thing what I don't want to do, I don't want to spend 10 hours breeding a fish and 50 hours marketing to try and find a buyer. I want to spend 10 hours making a fish and 10 minutes selling the fish so that I can spend that time making more fish. Or, like, the marketing part of it for most people is not the fun part. The playing with the fish part's the fun part. I want to maximize that, minimize the other part. Even though you go, well, I want to make $500. You could make more fish and sell them if it only takes a little bit of time, and you still make that $500. So, yeah, $19.99 a pair isn't bad for a nice guppy nowadays. Not dirt cheap, but it seems like a fair price. That's what we try to do. I try to make it fair pricing. We literally, when we first launched them, had people take a flight and fly in to buy them, and then breed them and sell them on Aquabid in their stores and all of that kind of stuff. And I could sell a lot of these fish for way more than we sell them for. But my goal is to share and to keep the price affordable and it be fair for a lot of people. And I use you guys and your resource to do that. Your memberships, your buying from us, all of this kind of goes into this communal pot, allows me to buy fish. We hope that Dean or I will breed them, and then we'll be able to share them at a fairer price. Still got to pay for food, still got to pay for time, still got to pay for these things. No one wants to do anything for free, but also we're not trying to go, well, only takes one. I only got to sell one pair of fish if you buy it for $1 billion. I'd rather make it at $20 at a time, $30 at a time, that type of thing. What do I think about temp regulators like ink birds? Good to use or necessary? I think if you have a few tanks, as in like 2 or 3, useful. If you have more than 2 or 3 tanks, they're in the same room, I really believe in heating the whole room. It might cost you a little bit more in heating bill, but when you do the math for that heat versus buying ink birds and heaters and replacing them and potential loss of a tank, I like heating. The safest way for me is heating the room. And it's always been that way, and it's pretty much always going to be that way.
It's just whether you can justify it or not. And the better you make a room, so if it's smaller, insulated better, you use all your heat sources efficiently. You guys might have seen on the community post, I bought an infrared thermometer or infrared camera. And this is something that I can use at the store, the warehouse, my fish room, to identify leaks of air and heat to save power bills, essentially. And so I'm going to bring this up for you. And you can kind of see here, we're looking at, this is my shoulder, but if we look at this aquarium, let me see, ketchup, there we go. You can kind of see the aquarium's warm, and why is the aquarium warm? Well, there's a canister filter heating it up in there. There's no heater, but there's a canister filter in there that makes some heat, and there's lights on top of it heating that. You can see it's cold. You can see my arm, right? My arm's real hot. Cold down on the ground, though, because it's concrete and pretty cold down there. And then you got the stand a little bit warmer, and then you've got pretty warm. And then if I look up here, you can see where I'm running electrical connections and the studs and everything. And so this $250 device, if you use a coupon, could allow you to save money. Now, there are local programs sometimes at libraries and things like that where you can rent one or borrow one. I think there's an online place that'll do that too. And if you were to build a room that was like, oh, we keep the door closed, I put a blanket or something in front of the window, I insulated really well, I did these things, I run a dehumidifier so the air is dry, but it heats the room. And this is, I'll say this, when I had a lot less money, when I didn't even work for Fisher before that, I was able to calculate, and I still was like, yeah, it doesn't make sense to buy heaters. They go bad. They use lots of electricity. I have to put in more electricity into the room to be able to run that many heaters for how many tanks I want to run. And I was able, at least in my area at the time, was like, okay, well, a dehumidifier uses a kilowatt meter so you can monitor the energy. Basically cost me $50 a month to run, and it took out all the humidity so I didn't get mold, and it didn't feel awful in there. It made the heat I needed to keep all my aquariums warm. And it was one device I bought for $300. And I used it for 12 years. And then eventually it went kaput and I bought another one, right? And so, but 12 years of keeping my aquariums at the thing they needed, and I didn't have to worry about it anymore. That's very freeing. So again, that energy thing of like, not even talking about watts, we're just talking about like mental energy. I don't have to worry about heaters anymore. They don't go bad. I don't gotta check on them. I can spend my time focusing on the things I like, the plants and the fish. And so when you get more than 2, 3, 4 aquariums, I really think it makes sense if you keep them in the same room to start scaling that as best you can. Air pumps, heat, water change system, as in like, oh, my bathroom sink, I got a guest bath right outside, and I can keep the python in the sink below it. And instead of having all around the house, then you got to run different stuff all around. That's just if you're talking about keeping things stable and all of that, heating a room I find to be the best method. Let's see here. Does heating the room work for high temp fish like discus or rams? You can do that, but you don't want to be in there. So a lot of times you'll meet breeders or facilities that have a hot room and a normal room. That hot room, you're just sweating nonstop. So like what Dean does, he heats the room, and then if he's running in his discus tanks, he'll run a heater in addition to that, but it's a smaller lift as opposed to the big lift, right? So it's less stress on the heaters and that kind of stuff. I can't heat my whole house, but I did move my tanks to interior rooms where I wouldn't have to rely on tank heaters as much. Yeah. By the way, I'm not advocating you heat your whole house. I'm advocating you heat a room. So you pick like a bedroom or an office or something like that, and you keep the door closed when you're not in there, and you have a source of heat. It could be your furnace for your room or for your house. It most often is a dehumidifier or like a little heater. But so here's a great example. When you're cold, let's say you're laying in bed and you're cold, right? You're like, the room's kind of cold. If you put the blanket over your head, and now you're breathing under the blanket. It gets warmer, right? Because you're trapping in the hot air coming out of you. I'm full of hot air. We all know this, right? Okay, now do that with your aquariums. Like, well, what if I put all my aquariums into a corner, into a room, and all the heat from the lights is contained over there, and all the filter heat's contained over there, and maybe I have a room heater that has to kick on every couple hours. Now you're getting into some efficiency factors. And even what people don't realize, even if you have a dual stand, right? So you got one down low and one up top for aquariums, heat rises. Like in a fish store, you'll have, in fact, I can quote you the exact temperatures because we were going through this today at the store because it is a polar vortex here and it's going to be cold for like another 2 weeks. And we're trying to manage it without, we're trying to be efficient about it. That's why I got the device. I can give you exact quotes from a couple hours ago in the fish room expansion. Let me pull that up right here. And so the bottom row. So we set a thermometer on the bottom row on top of the tank. And that is 73.8 degrees. The middle row, so just one step up, is 78.6. And the row above that is 79.3. And then on top of the wood stand in the store is 80.6. So each light heats the next tank up and heat rises. And so if you really focus on trying to make it really efficient, then you can save quite a bit of money and effort and energy and all of that. So just saying, back to the original question, are ink birds useful? Yes. At a certain point, like in Steven's room, he's running a butt ton of them. I saw in his video and I was like, dang, kind of a lot of cords and a lot of, when you get a lot of cords, you start going, ooh, did stuff get unplugged? Are you checking to make sure those devices aren't failing? Like, I get worried, if you have 30 aquariums and now you're running 30 ink birds and 30 heaters, what I find is eventually you're always just having a problem. Every week is another like, oh, the thing's doing a thing. Like, because you've got 30 lights, 30 heaters, 30 ink birds, 30 overflows for water, 30 tanks with fish that get sick, 30. And eventually you just end up with, you're like, oh, there's always something going wrong because I have X amount of sources that can go wrong. 30 canister filters, 30 sponge filters, 30. Now, 30 is an extreme number, but, if you're number 7 of this, 7 of that, 7 of that, 7 of that, and I try to limit the things down to like, well, you could have 30 tanks, but one heater. Well, that sounds nice, right? 30 tanks, but one air pump. Well, that sounds nice. We run an extra AC unit in our bedroom living in the South. Yeah. There's also, you don't have to sleep where you don't have to sleep with the fishes. Like, there's some strategy to keeping these fishes. My betta named Zero was missing a little bit of his tail. Thanks to you, I knew to treat him with aquarium salt. I thank you, and my fish thanks you. Well, I'm glad to hear that he's on the mend. 0 to hero. Just takes a little bit of aquarium salt. Yeah, the cord situations are kind of overwhelming, I'm not going to lie, but the failures have been few and far between, luckily. Yeah, no, I do think it adds a layer of redundancy, but I just know that at the same time, things can get away from people. I've been to some fish rooms where you're just like, whoa, there's no plan? You just see an aquarium from the side of the road, and you just keep setting it up and setting it up and setting it up. And like, have you ever been to a fish room where you're like, you run 30 tanks and 30 different air pumps with 30 different types of filters with 30 different lights? Like, this is chaos. My brain wants to explode. Yeah, I like streamlining so that I can, share parts and know things. So, yeah. Let's see here. If I ever come to South Korea, I'd be happy to meet you in Seoul and take you to a neighborhood with many fish stores. I do want to go to Seoul. I also want to go to a Psy concert. Just because Korean concerts, there's like 100,000 people. I also think I would just like get claustrophobic or something and be like, this is the worst idea ever. But then whenever I see it, I could be like, I've done that. And if you're hearing me, I live to tell the tale. I want to see from just that many humans in one area standpoint of like, wait, when the concert's over, is that a 7-hour journey to get out? Or, oh no, bro, they got this many exits in a single file and it takes 22 minutes. Like, whoa, this is an amazing feat that I had no concept of. But yes, there is a bunch of cool. Because I think I want the trip I want to do is like go to Japan and you just take an overnight ferry that you can sleep on to get to South Korea. I think, which kind of sounds like a great. Oh no, my wife's making me laugh. It sounds like a great thing. My wife, 30 burgers, 30 pizza, 30 pasta, 30 pies, 30 shakes, 30 fries, 30 nuggets, 30 tacos. If anyone know, I didn't know that meme until my wife showed it to me like 3 months ago. And now I laugh at every time someone overlays that with a dog or a cat. I laugh too much. Tomorrow I have my final job interview. I'm supposed to do a presentation about any topic. I'll be doing a presentation about Posilidae. Is that how you say that? Posilidae? Basically, guppies. Like a true fish nerd that I am. All right, well, hopefully they just go like, wow, this guy's super nerdy. We should hire him. I credit the internet with my low failure rate on tanks since picking up the hobby 3 years ago. Previous tanks were all 12 years prior to that, before the best online aquarium resource existed. I know. I was gonna troll other websites and creators. I'm like, that's just gonna backfire on me. So I just ended with I know. Let's see. That's wild if you got 30 hang-on backs. I managed a store that had 300 tanks that had 300 hang-on backs. Brutal. Yeah. That was part that was killing me is like, but you're spending so much money on power. No wonder you're not making money at this fish store. You're killing me. Let's see. I'm only running 12 different air pumps and 8 different filters and 16 types of tanks. Thank you very much. Hey, sometimes you got to Frankenstein it. You learn a ton, by the way. I think a lot of people, you start out that way in the hobby. You just kind of like, yeah, I'm going to do a thing, and I'm going to do a thing, and I'm going to do a thing. And, oh, I got a garage sale tank, and I got a club tank, and I bought this thing at a raffle, and I got this. And then eventually you move or you get tired of it, and you start streamlining. And I think that's just where I've been for a long time. Like you end up streamlining. So, any thoughts on Brachyraphis libear fish? I've never really kept them. I've only kept them like once or twice, and I've always been scared off with they're kind of mean, and I don't like my fish to be mean. So my thoughts are like, one, they're not super colorful. And then 2, they're kind of mean and they chase down their fry also. And I'm like, well, that's not very cool either. So, yeah, I think someone should move close to me and keep a bunch of them. And I'd probably fall in love with them because I do love live bears. So, yeah. Let's see here. That sponge filter off the center edge of that little shelf on the wall is making me anxious. Oh, it is. Oh man, all right, I gotta fix that. There we go. Fixed. Now, if you sneeze too hard, that thing will fall off. I hope that like 11% of the chat is just like their eyes just like tweaking right now. Like, he fixed it by making it worse. Let's see here. Who else is celebrating their 1-year membership next month? Mountain Greenery is. That's who. 50 years of fish stuff. Lucky that I have a basement and an attic. An attic. When I need something, I put it in the online cart, then go shopping around the house and see if I have one. Yeah, a lot of what Zenzo and I were doing were just sorting. I always end up buying multiple stuff of like, the catalyst was I needed 1-inch black elbows for tanks we were gonna do, and we had 72 of them at the store, and I was going to redo the store, so I bought another 50 of them to redo the store. And so I was like, all right, bring this stuff to my house. I need to know what we have in inventory, because in no man's land at the store is not inventory. We don't know we have it. We're buying stuff we already have. But, you know, when I was going to redo the store 3 years ago, when the expansion should have been happening and we hadn't run into 4 million roadblocks, I forgot that I already preemptively bought those. So now I have extras, which is good because I use them a lot, but still. Let's see. Got some new shrimp today, watching the live stream while I watch them get used to their new tank. Inception. I recently acquired a pair of freshwater, I don't know this, Mogurunda guppies. Mogurunda guppies. Not guppies, gobies. Mogurunda gobies. And I'm having a tough time researching them. Everything I find online looks nothing like my two guys. Maybe you know about them. Well, I think it's apparent. I can't pronounce them, so I don't know about them. Gobies in general have been a newer addition to the hobby. For a long time, all the gobies were the same for like the last 10 years. Then they broke out like Stiphodon and Rhinogobica species. But if you post on the forum like a picture of what you have, I might be like, oh, I know these as random thing that people have been saying for a few years. But yeah, that's definitely an area that I would say I'm not well versed in, because they just weren't popular in the hobby for so many years. So next week, everything behind me will be just on the edge. The plan is actually, I consider you guys, you know, insiders. If you're 2 hours and 57 minutes into this, yeah, or you're listening on the podcast, soon there won't be anything on the wall. Well, not anything. All the products won't be on the wall, because I'm building a fish store in my fish room. So I'm gonna have all the products laid out like it's a fish store, so I can do videos for RPP stores, and when I do a video of like, hey, here's a new product, it'll look like I'm in the fish store. And yes, I could you just drive your fish store? Yes, I could, but I can't film that type of video in the fish store during hours. So that means I can only film after 7 p.m. at night, and that's if everybody left exactly on time and had no more work to do. So I usually can't start till 8 or 8:30 at night, and that makes for a really long night when you want to film a few videos. So I'm basically building a new fish store while also testing stuff for the store expansion, shelving and racks and stuff like that. So we're hoping to put that together, and then it'll double as every day I'm like, you know what I need? I don't have it. Where if I have a whole little miniature store worth of our products right there, I can pull one off the shelf, order more from the store or our warehouse, and resupply it. And so like right now, even if I was like, I need a thing, I want to be able to grab it off the shelf and have it, not go like, well, I would totally show you our airline holders, but I don't have any right now. So that's a bummer. Let's see here. When do guppy fry develop a swordtail, if it's to be expected? Usually pretty late when they're really coloring up. Can frozen food have planaria? I believe that you could have frozen planaria in your frozen food, but I don't think it would like revitalize in the tank. It depends on, you know, the supplier of the frozen foods and how they're harvesting. They could have a controlled environment, or it could be like they're trying to harvest from the wild. But in general, I haven't seen it in the foods that I feed. So the best way, if you're really trying to contact me, Dan Molstad, the forum. Like, if you go through customer service, you got to get through an army of customer service agents that know that 500 people, not 500, but a lot of people every day want to talk directly to me. If you post on the forum, you have probably a 60% chance that if you ask a well-articulated question that has sentences, at some point in the week, I will get back to you. Other people will chime in too, but if you bring real low effort where it's like not sentences and don't have a picture or whatever, I'll just skip it and be like, I don't have time for this. Like, if you're just like, hey, I have a fish that's not feeling well, what do I do, Corey? It's like, wait and give me the you didn't give me the tools I need to answer your question. So I need a picture, I need water parameters, I need like a picture of the disease or whatever. And so if you come in hot on the forum and you're like, hey, here's what I'm doing, I want to set up a fish room and here's the layout and this and this and this, Corey, what do you think about XYZ? And then I go, yes, I can answer that in a timely manner, and I will do it. And you can just use the @ symbol. So you do @Corey, @Corey. I'll get a notification when you post on the forum, and the next time I'm free on the forum, I will look into it. Sentences are important. From a guy that has been helping people for a long time on the internet, we are getting worse by the day. Less and less sentences are being used, and what you feel with this sponge filter, I feel with exceptionally bad spelling and sentence structure. It makes me geek out. Now, I am not gifted in those, but I at least go out of my way to be like, let me try to make sure I'm making sense. And, yeah. Gotta give me that cold water. Corey's answered my question on the forum, helped a lot. I didn't tag him, but I did use pictures. So often, the reason why I ask for pictures, and customer service asks for pictures, is because we find people that could be new to the hobby, or just maybe English is a second language for them, that a picture will just show us where you're trying to describe something. And so, like if you talk about fungus, like, well, is it fluffy? No, it's not really fluffy. It's more like cottony. Like, okay, well, to me, cottony is fluffy. Well, no, but it's like this. And then you just show a picture. I'm like, yeah, that's fungus. And so we try to skip ahead so that, mostly, if I'm being honest, so I can interact with the most of you I can. So it's not like, well, it took me half an hour to get to the point with this person. Instead, it's like, hey, it took me 2 minutes. Hey, I got 15 people I helped. Great. That was a good day. I went to CB Nuts yesterday. They cannot custom grind super crunchy peanut butter, and I did not buy a cookie either. Well, I hope they banned you on the spot then. If you're not going to eat their cookies, I wouldn't custom grind super crunchy peanut butter if you don't buy cookies either. No, I have no idea. But you missed out. You should have bought a cookie. Let's see. Maybe they just know. Maybe they're professionals. They know that super crunchy peanut butter is a #1 killer. You got to go with only medium crunchy. Everyone knows that. If you're in the peanut butter trade, everybody knows that. Okay. The Posilia I have from Alfaros colstratus. That one's always hard to pronounce. Very cool, although not very colorful. You got to light them from the side with that fish. If you can get sunlight on them or get a light coming from the side, they've got a blue-greenish hue from the side of their body that looks amazing. But yes, I agree. Every time I breed them and I put them in the store, people are like, no one wants to buy them. And I take the light and I put it on the side, and they're like, that thing looks amazing. And then we all go like, yeah, but it's real hard to light a fish from the side. So you kind of need sunlight coming through a window or something like that. Any experience with Corydoras self-poisoning? I haven't witnessed it, but I can tell you this, Karina. We have to my knowledge, the only person studying it in the USA did a presentation. So if you became a member, you could watch it. And they have a lab at a university, and they study the toxins in Corydoras. There's different types. different toxicity levels. You basically have to stress the fish out a lot to get them to express it, and it's a concentration thing. So that's why it typically happens more in bags and small bodies of water and not so much in big things. He recommends things like stressing out Corydoras a bunch to get them to release those toxins in an aquarium, chasing with a net a bunch, then putting them in a tank, and you shouldn't have that problem. But there's lots more to dive into if you really, like, if you were going, man, I want to learn a lot about that, be like, well, we are so nerdy that we basically have the world, or at least the United States expert, give an hour-long presentation on Corydora toxins. That's about, that and electric signal communication in knife fish and stuff. That's on the super nerdy end of the club talks. Like, you gotta really be wanting to see some nerdy stuff to see that action. And then we've got a lot more applicable stuff, but we do have, let me see if I can find it. Corydora, it's in live streams, because we live stream those talks. Corydora, let's see. Yes. It's Eric Thompson, and the topic of the talk is, are Corydoras poisonous? And that even breaks down for a lot of people, poisonous versus venomous. And it is a live stream with Q&A afterwards. The total length is 1 hour and 26 minutes. So for $5, you could nerd out on that and a bunch of other stuff. And to answer the question, people are like, why don't you make it for free? Eric goes around the country and he'll give talks to clubs, and he gets to collect Corydoras, trade Corydoras, learn, and all of that by giving the talk. And so most speakers, I don't know if it's most, a lot of speakers don't want it to be freely open to the public, because then they lose their ability. So basically, he doesn't really make money from doing that anyway, but he likes to be able to travel around, speak to clubs, and be a hobbyist and give that talk. And if everybody just downloaded it, that would end. So that's why it's behind a membership. And it's the same thing that happens when he gives it in person or stuff like that. I think he has a channel, though. If I remember right, he has his own channel. It might just be Eric Thomas, or he's got a. Oh no, it's his username, because he hangs out sometimes with us. It's Beckatine12 or something like that. Someone that's cooler than me will remember exactly what his username is, and that's his channel name. And you can see a little bit of some of his fish and the lab facility, but I don't think he'd have a whole talk on there like that. So, yeah, there you go. Welcome, David Shade. All right, it's 5 o'clock. I've got some stuff I want to get done in the fish room and work-wise. I realize I am at work, but there's always more work with the work. Any idea when Brill Wheel will be back in stock? As soon as we can get it. So we get plant shipments 2 to 3 times a week. If the farms have it, we will have it. If they don't have it, we don't have it. And so every week, we try and buy it from 2 different farms. If we bought them out, or they're too frozen, or they miss forecast demand, or whatever, we won't have it. But we usually try to order a few hundred of that plant at least every single week. So if we're out, farms are out, unfortunately. Creamy peanut butter or not peanut butter? I can do both. I'm refined enough to know sometimes you need crunchy, sometimes you need creamy. Just depends on the mood, right? I lost over $100 worth of Corys in less than 24 hours. That is the only explanation I can come up with. I could probably come up with a bunch more. If you haven't experienced it, usually they literally just die in the bag. Like 5 minutes later, they're just dead. So if they all died in the bag, high likelihood it's toxicity. If they died in your aquarium, could be a lot of other things. So Corydoras don't ship well. I don't hold that sentiment. As someone who brings in, let's say, 200 to 500 Corys every week, I consider them very easy to ship. So maybe we just have great luck with that. But, I would say the same thing, too, about, some people have horrible luck with cardinals and all that. It depends. What's the source? What's your water like? What's the treatment? Like, Dan's Fish would be a great channel to look into if you really wanted to see what fish go through to kind of get to a store or him or anything. A lot of people don't realize It could be from breeder straight to you, could be breeder to bigger wholesaler to smaller wholesaler to smaller wholesaler to store to you. Could be wild caught to store, but most likely it's wild caught to exporter to importer to wholesaler to store to you. And on every one of those hops, they're usually getting worse, less food, more crowding, that kind of stuff. And so a lot of times it's not so much is a fish more or less hardy or not, it's how are they often being treated in the journey. And so sometimes, and that's why in general, like if you can have a breeder down the street, that is just going to perform better because it's like, oh, that hop 4 doors down is way different than 6 different flights, right? So, yeah, I will say this, and I think I can defend this. Dan's fish so far is the best that I've seen at shipping fish. He's also kind of the most expensive. Some people will say, I'm not willing to pay that, and I understand it. Some people would say it's worth any price to get a healthy fish, and I understand that too. And then there's most people somewhere in the middle. So some fish I'll buy from a wholesaler. I bought a $150 pair of swordtails from him. Couldn't get them anywhere else. Paid the $150 plus your shipping, right? And then there's times where it's like, oh, I can just get that from my store or the place down the street. So, you know, you got to pick and choose where you're buying, what you're buying, and what you put value in. But, yeah. Shrimp Sanctuary says, thank you so much for your time. It's always deeply appreciated. Sending warm greetings from Singapore. We were celebrating Chinese New Year this week. Wishing you safety and joy for the rest of the week. I did watch your video last week-ish, or listen to it at least. Ben, Shrimp Sanctuary, which I think he's giving a talk. Are you the next talk, or are you February? Or wait, you might just be the next talk. Let me see. Let's see here. Ben gives a talk February 15th. Yeah, I think you're next. So he'll be giving a talk on Cardinia crystal shrimp, which he's a judge all around the world and very knowledgeable and has a channel dedicated to it. He had an interesting topic about misinformation on shrimp and kind of brought up the topic of, you know, people doing it for profit versus just generally being misinformed and all of that. And I think it was a interesting topic. And even me, I'm wondering, like, should I ever speak about shrimp? Being that I don't dedicate my time to only shrimp, I could be, what do I want to say? Unintentionally misinforming people because I inform people based on my experiences. And he had a good point of there are people that only do this, they specialize in it, and they dedicate their life to it. And they should be listened to with more authority than someone like myself, where I'm popular doesn't mean I know the most. And so I do go out of my way to, I do try and highlight people like Ben and other people that are specialists in their different categories and try to give them a platform to talk to people. But I thought it was a very interesting conversation and topic that he was doing. And they got a lot of support in the comment sections from it too. And if that's resonating with you, check out that video. But yeah, I just one I listened to. And yeah, I will say, and this is not a slight at Ben, whether he's in person or online, he talks faster than I'm used to. So I should try slowing it down on YouTube. It's easier to understand Ben in person, but on YouTube, he has a little bit softer spoken voice. So the microphone doesn't pick him up as clearly, and he speaks fast, and he's pretty technical in terms of shrimp. So sometimes I got to slow it down and rewatch. But yeah, he'll be giving a talk next month on the 15th. If you're a member, you'll be able to see that live talk and ask questions and all of that. And as always, if you become a member, you can watch all previous talks. So, you know, like right now, if you're like, I paid $5, you could watch like almost 40 different, 90-minute presentations from specialists. And then after that, in March, we have Joshua McWilliams, which I've never seen speak. So most people I've seen before. And he's going to talk about the history of goldfish in the aquarium hobby, which You know, it's not easy to find goldfish speakers. I don't know if you guys know that. Very few people kind of specialize in goldfish and will speak about it and do all of that. So, you know, we wanted to get a goldfish speaker, but it's not easy to find. So we're starting there. And that's not to downplay that. If you guys happen to know other great goldfish speakers, well, you know, we probably want to try the line like one up a year. There's so many topics in aquariums that we can't really do more than like, you know, it's like, oh, one aquascaping talk, one shrimp talk, one goldfish talk, one African cichlid talk, one breeding talk, one live bear talk. By the time you book out 12 months, you're like, oh, there's just more topics than there are months to really do this. So Killer Kitty donating 5 memberships. Thank you very much. And congrats to those that just got memberships. You, Linnea and EK and the dad, or the, like THA dad. And Frenzy 4K. You can go watch those talks. Same with William Jansen. So, let's see. A $1 from Steamfod Aquatics, getting that last minute revenue. $1, get a shout out. All right, I'm calling it, and thanks for hanging out. I'm going to get a video out this week. I didn't film last week. I filmed today. Editor's got to edit it probably later in the week, but that'll be fine. And leave comments down below. Buy all of our stuff. Check out the links if you want to see what kind of crap I buy on Amazon. I added a whole new section for tools. I've been building this fish room household kit, I guess, because I'm tired of leaving too many tools at the store or the warehouse or my fish room or in the house. And every time I go to do a project, I go, where is that tool? And so I now have a mobile toolkit like Dean has. It's going to move with me. If I go somewhere and I need to work on something, the tools come with me instead of, I thought I left this here last time. We should have one. Wait, we don't have one? Oh, no. And we got to go buy one. And then pretty soon I got 3 of a thing at one place and none at another. So, yeah. 5 more memberships from Jody P. Thank you. Later, fishy folks, says the Zen Ginger. Thanks as always, says Ty Miller. And good night, says Karina. It's the my wife. How's it going? It's the fish room go bag. That's right. My it's like a prepper bag. If I gotta go, this is the bag I take with me. So, all right. Thanks everybody. Had a great time. We'll see you next time. And thanks for showing up and supporting us in what we do. We try to make it fun. Try to make it lighthearted. Do what you find fun. Put the energy you want to put in. Compliment somebody. And